recording. So welcome to our network security class. I appreciate everybody being here. And for those of you who are in my CCNP Encore class, thank you for letting me not be at class Monday. My back was just absolutely killing me. So that happens. There are days when it just happens and there's not a whole lot I can do other than just take medicine and go to sleep. I want to start today. First off, let's open up any questions on the class, what's going on, any questions on any of the material you've hit so far.
I don't have any.
Okay, anybody else?
Nope.
Everybody's clear on what we got to do to finish the class and be able to pass. We all know I'm gonna open this up. Well, I guess I'm gonna log back in since it's been sitting here too long. You need to do the packet tracers for me. You need to do all the module exams. You need to do the final exam, and then you need to do the packet tracer, PTSA. So there's, again, those are the things. It's a little different than any other class I've had because I'm not asking you to do the labs on real gear. Although I will tell you, you can easily do this on real gear if you've got the gear in your classroom. So just be aware. The only thing you may not have is your Depict firewall. So I want to throw that out there. So today I want to do, we're in module 4. Module 4 does some things that are pretty simple. We already know about. We know about enable secret passwords. We know about console and V2 line passwords. What we have not learned about is that in some advanced versions of the iOS, and by the way, I had to use this screen to share. My camera's here, so I'll look over here. So sorry, just look at the side of my head. But in some advanced versions of the iOS, they've introduced a new way to encrypt your passwords that are stored in your running and startup configs. Right now, in the old version, it always used MD5 hashes. Well, MD5 hashes can be broken. Pretty much supercomputer can easily break an MD5 hash. So they have actually brought about a new type of password encryption. By the way, service password encryption, this can be broken in about a second. So it is only good for shoulder surfing. Stop people from looking over your shoulder and seeing it. If you ever send your configs in any way, shape, or form for support or anything, remove all passwords from it. Because even if you do use this new scrypt, I wouldn't trust it either, because as soon as it leaves your site and they've got your hash, just be aware there's danger there. So one of the examples I'll show you here, let me see if I can find a quick, I don't want to type 7 password tracker. And this is the one I usually use in New Zealand, but you'll see here, there's the password. So let's copy this, Control C. Go back to my password cracker, Control V, crack password Cisco. All right, so that's how easy, if you use service password encryption, it's how easy it is to crack. I mean, it's nothing. So that's just to protect against shoulder surfing. In higher versions of the iOS, we do have the ability to change the encryption method. And it's coming up down here. I'll show it to you in a minute. The other thing we can do is we also can set a longer length for passwords. We do that in NSA, and actually we got it in some of the other ones, but security passwords min length will let you set a minimum length for the passwords. And then we've got this command that you may or may not have seen before. How many of you have seen this one before? If you've been in the program a long time, it used to be in the CCNA, then it wasn't in the CCNA, and now it's back. This isn't that security, but it is. But basically, login block for 120 seconds. If 3 failed attempts within 60 seconds. Now, let me explain something to you. There's some debate in the security world about using things like this. Why? Can anyone actually think of a reason why this could be bad in a security environment? All right, I want you to think about something. What if I did an attack by writing a script that every 100 seconds did 3 very quick attempts to log into your router within 60 seconds? It would continually block you. So what would happen is you would make it where you're unable to log in because it's locked, it's blocked out. Okay, there's ways to mitigate that, because we're going to do some ACLs to only allow, you remember access class? Everyone remember access class? Yeah, DOS,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm our denial of service. That's exactly where that would be a big issue. Having said that, though, it's still probably a good idea to set it because of the fact that it gives you some control over it. Down here is the different versions of encryption we can use. So we've always just did enable secret and put a number in. If you or put your password in. If you do that, you get a type 5 or an MD5 hash. But if you do enable secret 9, you will actually end up using scrypt, which is more robust than MD5. Now you've got to be running iOS 15.3 or higher, 15.3.3M or higher. And it's also slightly stronger than the PBK DF2. So you might as well use 9 instead of the 8. I mean, it's there, but I would go and use that. I've never even heard of PBK DF2. Has anybody else heard of it? It's not one I'm familiar with. But I have heard of scrypt, obviously because of that. But okay, I see it. Actually, it's using all right, SHA-256. I do know that. So it's using SHA-256 and type 8. All right, sorry about that. I'm a doofus. Scrypt is your best. Here again is the secret here, and that user Bob secret. That you could still do secret user Bob secret scrypt and then use this name, and then that would give you, with the algorithm type, this will actually allow you to use that scrypt for even your usernames for your local database. We will learn as we move forward. And it's not as much in here as in some of the others, but we will learn as we move forward about using TACUS and Radius. So we don't have local user databases. We store it in a central database. Okay. Now, virtual logins going into the V2I line. Obviously, we need banners. The banner should match your security policy. It should be vetted by a lawyer. Make sure that it's vetted by a lawyer, because otherwise you can end up in where it will not hold up in court. These are the items I was talking about: login, block for seconds, attempts, and tries. If you do this command right here, login quiet mode access class, this actually says even while blocked, those hosts can log in, can attempt to log in during that quiet mode, and they're not supposed to. So you can always, this is kind of like a backup to stop that denial of service attack. You maybe put in a range of your management host or a single management host. I wouldn't suggest a single, I'd suggest several, but it's possible that allows you to set it to where even if it's being blocked during that quiet mode, you can get in. User delay, login delay is how long they must wait before they can try again after a unsuccessful login. And then when you're doing this log success and failures, that will create a entry in your logs for each one of those. So if you're outputting to a syslog server, every time someone successfully logs in, you would get an information, or unsuccessful. The only thing you got to be careful with is don't log too much information, because you can get yourself into a situation so much junk's going in your log you just don't even look. But you know, there's a balance there. And I will tell you this: sometimes your legal qualifications or your legal specifications determine whether you have to log on, log everything. Some of them do, and if you do, you've got to go with what's legal or what's for your particular one. So that's, again, the quiet mode. Normal mode is watch mode. This is when it is you're trying to log in and it actually can be logged out, or excuse me, it can be blocked where they can't get in if they try unsuccessfully the number of times you have set. But during that time that it's being blocked is called the quiet period. But with quiet mode, you can set up an access list that allows login quiet mode access list permit admin, which would, in this case, they're allowing 2 hosts, 10 and 11. So these 2 would be able to get in even if you had set it to be blocked and it was currently being blocked. So you're in quiet mode where you can't log in with anything else. I would always set that, especially if I did set the login block for command. Okay. any questions on that? That's pretty simple, not anything majorly difficult there. SSH, we want to do SSH. I have run into some problems here recently with older versions of PuTTY and the newer C1000 switches. The newer C1000 switches would not support a version of PuTTY, a version of SSH that PuTTY was actually designed to use. So we had some funkiness there. So just be aware, setting up PuTTY is, SSH is the same as always. Create a unique host name, set your domain name, generate your keys, create your local user, set the V2I line to use SSH. And I will also say, I always put an access class on the V2I lines to only allow certain hosts into the V2I line. It's not placed on here. That's not something they've done because they're only talking about SSH. But I would also use that same thing we saw before and change Bob's algorithm type to script so that his password is being encrypted and a better encryption method. All right. So here, show IP SSH will show you the type of SSH you're using. So version 2, version 1.99, version 2, version 3. That's pretty simple. I don't really see anything major problem there. Don't forget, this is hard to tell that that's not a 1, but that's an L, TAC L. A lot of people get that wrong. So this says SSH with the login with the user Bob to this IP address, then it will prompt you for a password. So that's not a 1, it's an L. Be aware of that. If you're using PuTTY, you'll use the SSH or Terraterm, either one. Now, I did this lab, our 449. Are there any questions with our packet tracer? Did anything come up that gave you problems? I did it, and the only thing I forgot is I forgot to do I forgot to actually bring up VLAN 1. So I just went and did a no shut on VLAN 1. One of the things that I do ask in our class, when you upload your, okay, maybe, okay. It's not wanting to log me in. But in our uploads, in the class, I like for you to upload the PKA and a snip showing your check results. So 448. So if you're doing 448 right here. All right, so here's the PKA. So when you finish it, upload this as files, save as, with your full name and or just your name in front, full name in front, and the rest of the name's fine. Upload that, and then upload a snip or a picture of your check results on your assessment items, okay? Which is what we've done for every other class you've ever taken at Stanley, if you've ever taken one with us. All right, pretty much. But any questions on this? Pretty simple. No real problem. All right, good deal. Let's go to module 5, which is one of the more interesting ones because now we're getting to learn some stuff that you probably haven't seen before. To this point, there are 2 modes you have known about on a Cisco device. What are they? What are 2 main modes?
User exec, privilege exec.
User exec and privilege exec, exactly. User exec has a privilege level basically of 1, which means it can only look. It can't do hardly anything.
Only show commands.
Pretty much only show commands and very limited amount of show commands. Can't even do all the show commands. Privilege exec can do everything. So we basically had 2 modes. One of you can just look around or you can do everything. So there's very little in between. So there is a way to actually make individual commands be at different privilege levels from 1 to 15. Now, 0 there is actually a 0 level. So it only allows you to basically get disable, enable, exit, help, and log out. That's it. So we really don't even use it, but it is there if we ever had to use it for something. But what we can do is we can actually move commands to different privilege levels and then set an enable secret for that command level. here's a great example. So we're going to take privilege mode level and then the command. So we're going to move the command ping to level 5. So that would mean, by the way, that would now mean that if that was a command that was available earlier at level 1, it's no longer available at anything below level 5. But we do privilege exec level 5, and then we create, okay, username support privilege 5, algorithm type scrypt secret Cisco 5. This creates a user named support, okay, and we also create this enable algorithm secret level 5 Cisco 5. So if anyone types enable and puts in Cisco 5, they would only get commands at level 5 and below. So any command that's allowed below level 5, they will also get. But those people at lower levels don't get ping now because ping's now been moved to level 5.
Higher the number, higher the level.
Exactly. So if you're higher, you can do those below you, but if you're below, you can't do the commands above you. That's exactly right.
Similar with the modes, right? Whatever you can do in global exec mode, you can do in
Right. Exactly. Very similar. Very similar. Now here's an example. They've created a level 10 junior admin. So they put the reload command. They moved it to level 10. They created a level 10 enable secret password, and they also created a level 10 user that can go in. And then last but not least, they made a level 15 admin and did enable secret level 15 Cisco 123, and then made a username admin. So at this point, the admin could do everything. The junior admin could do reload, ping, and anything else below that. And then the support could only do ping and anything below that. So here you see an example. They're logging in, they type enable 5, put in the enable 5 password, which is Cisco 5. And the only command they have is ping and the other commands below that. Reload is not a command at level 1 or below level 5, so they can't do it. So they get a unknown command. Basically, it thinks they're trying to access another PC because they didn't do the no IP domain lookup. We go into level 10 though, we can both ping and we can reload because we had moved reload there. And if we go in at 15, we got everything. We got the ability to do everything because you're privileged level 15 to that. So there are some negatives. There's no control to interfaces, ports, logical interfaces, or slots using these privilege levels. You literally can just move commands around. By the way, if you've ever used ICE, or if you've used, which is ISE, Identity Services Engine, or the old version of it way back, there is a way in that particular thing to move commands around. So when you log in, individual accounts have individual commands they can run. The other is commands at a lower privilege are always executable at higher levels. So if you put something at 5 that you didn't want to be available at level 10, the level 10 person is still going to be able to do it because it's below them. Those at higher are not available to those lower, which I don't really see that as a limitation necessarily, because that's kind of what we're trying to do, is to put commands at certain places. And then assigning a command with multiple keywords allow for those. So allow and show IP route also allows the user show and show IP commands. So basically, if you give them this at level 5, they would have access to all show commands and all show IP commands. So if it makes up part of a can, now that to me is a huge limitation. Okay, because maybe all I wanted to do is allow them to see the route table and maybe 1 or 2 other things as a junior admin so they could report to me. But I give them this and suddenly they got access to all the show commands and all the show IP commands. So that is a huge negative. We're going to talk about how to fix that in a second as we move down to role-based CLI, which is really, really cool. Before we go any further, though, any questions about this? This is called configuring privilege levels. Creating different levels, putting commands at different levels.
Can we not move one particular show command into one level?
No. If you do, like I said, all the keywords are allowed. So if you do multiple keywords, it allows all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. It's a very bad negative. Yeah, exactly. So here's the good news. Let's fix that. here's how you can fix it. It's with role-based CLI. So we can, first off, you got to be in root view to create any of these other views. Okay, one is CLI view and one is called a super view. Well, a CLI view is a group of commands that you put together. Now, there's no command hierarchy. There's no lower, higher views. Basically, you could say, in this view, I'm going to give show IP route. I'm going to give show IP OSPF neighbors, and I'm going to give, I don't know, one other show command. That's it. If you're in that view and that's assigned to you, you can do all those commands, but nothing else. So it fixes our problem of the above doing privilege levels. Okay, doing the privilege levels. A super view is a collection of CLI views put together. So in other words, you can't put individual commands into a super view, but you can take multiple CLI views and put them into a super view. All right, so let's look at how this works here. So we've got our root view. Okay, so you got to be there to define any other views. We then can, if we only want CLI views, we can create these CLI views and put individual commands. By the way, commands can be in more than one view. And if you're in more than one view, you have the ability to do all the commands in the views that you're a part of. Okay, so here we go, going just like that. All right, so those commands show runs in multiples. And then a super view is taking multiple of these CLI views and just combining them together. So you can't put individual commands into super views. You can only put other CLI views into a super view. But you can see this gives you a lot of control over what you can do about moving these commands around and giving access to them. So let's look at, first off, you got to use this command we're going to be using a lot in the class, AAA new model. That allows you in global config. That lets you start and have the ability to create views. All right. Then you're going to create the view with a view name, and you're going to say whether or not it is a parser view, or you'll see whether or not it's going to be a super view down the road. But let's look at the parser view here. So this is going to be, we're going to look at adding commands into a normal CLI view. So AAA new model, parser view, show view, secret, Cisco. So that's going to be the secret that lets you get in this view. So if you type enable secret and put in this command, you get in this view. All right. This says include at the executive prompt the ability to do show commands. So this puts all show commands into the show view. In the verify view, we put the ping command. But notice if you don't set the, whenever you create a view, you've got to immediately give it a password. Otherwise, it will bark at you and say, oops, sorry, can't do it. You got to do the view first. You got to put a password in. Once password's in, you can put in the commands. And then last, we've got another view, reboot view, and we did that. So now if you look in the config, we've got CLI view for show view, which includes the show command. We've got, and by the way, you could have delineated that even further down. You could have put show IP route. You could have done individual commands, but by putting just show, it allows me to do all the show commands in the show view. This allows only ping. This allows only reload. In those three views, you get to them by using the passwords that you put in. Now,
so here I can give individual show commands.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. With this, with role-based CLI, yes, you can. You can put them into a CLI view. Exactly.
And one more question from that.
Yep.
Is that AAA authentication authorization accounting? What does that AAA mean?
Just AAA new model. Yeah, that stands for authentication, authorization, and accounting.
Is the same A? Is it the same AAA?
Yeah, same AAA. Yep.
Thank
you. Yep, that is exactly what it means, and we'll show later that how we handle. Basically, it's dealing with authentication, authorization, and accounting. Now, if we have and we create super views, what we have to do is this: we do a parser view named super view. So basically, the only difference is we say this is going to be a super view. As soon as you do that, you cannot place commands into the view. You can only place other CLIs, other CLI views. So I create a super view called user, and I put the CLI view show view in it. So this particular user, if they do enable and put in Cisco would only be able to do the commands in the show view CLI. This user, which is support, okay, you'll notice it barked because it didn't put the password in, or actually it put the wrong name in. You put show V and it was show view. But this support user has all the commands in the show view and the verify view. And then the junior admin has everything in show view, verify view, and reboot view. So remember, super views only allow you to place CLI views into the super view. You cannot put individual commands. The CLI view, again, you just put parser view name, and that's where you put the individual commands. Questions about these? And you see how much more powerful this is because you can move commands around. And you can do individual commands. You can group commands together with super views.
That's interesting and really flexible.
Very flexible. The only negative in this is this. If you had a large number of routers, it's a pain to set it up. That's why in large environments, more than likely you're going to be running ICE or Identity Services Engine. And Identity Services Engine has an item on the back end where you can do all of this, but do it by AAA authentication to a central source. So basically what you do is when you go to work on a Cisco device, go to log in, it'll probably go to your Windows domain database, verify the user, and then once that user is verified, it will authenticate them and then authorize what commands they can do on the devices. And then it will also track every single command that you do on the device. So in large environments, we have easier ways to do this. But if you only had a couple routers, a couple switches, this would be a very good way to implement this in your environment so that you've got different levels of administration. All right. So be aware of this. Okay, privilege levels versus the role-based CLI. I could see that showing up quite often, especially on the final exam. All right, let's move on. We're down into 6 now, so we're moving pretty good. We're going to look at a couple things here. We're going to look at iOS file and image configuration files. Look at auto secure. We'll look a little bit at routing protocol authentication, although we're not going to do all of the different routing protocols, but we'll talk about them. And that's probably all we'll get to today because we don't have all that much time left. But one of the things the iOS does, it's stored in part of the NVRAM. The iOS is in Flash. One of the problems that you probably run into before is people deleting your iOS image. Has any of your students ever done that before, especially on your switches? Happens a lot on switches. It's a pain in the rump. However, we do have the ability to create and hide or secure the iOS image. You do that with this. It's called Secure Boot Config. And what will happen is it is archived. The configuration is archived. Now this is for the startup config and the iOS image. But Secure Boot Image will actually secure the startup config, and it will make it to where you cannot see the flash inside of when you run a dir or run a flash command. That is, in a production environment, I think it's a good idea. In your lab, not so much, simply because it's one of those things where it's a little bit harder. Now, if you do a show secure boot set, you can see where you're booting from. So you can see here basically what is going on. But what in your labs, when you need to be able to see the iOS images most of the time, I don't necessarily think this is a good idea, but it is a good thing in the real world to do. So that secure boot image. You can also turn it off by just doing no secure boot image, and that stops it, takes it off. Make sure I got it. Let's see, resilient. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. Yeah, it's got to have PCMSI flash, otherwise it will not support this. So may not actually work on our 4000 series. One of the other things I want you to realize too, though, is on switches, how many of you have used the boot system command? How many of you are aware of the boot system command? Not on routers, but on switches.
I don't think I am.
Okay. This is something I want to teach you because it's actually something that can get you into trouble. On a switch, now Cisco router basically, and some of the newer Cisco routers do this too, to be honest with you. But on the switches, you have the ability, let's let this thing boot up, should show it to you. You have the ability to load more than one iOS image into Flash. And when you do that, many times we do this when we're doing upgrades. And if the Flash is big enough, this is the best way to do it. You'll load both images in the Flash and then show boot. Okay. Here's what you'll see here. It says the boot path list. Here's config file in your private, but you can set a boot path. Okay. So I go in global config, I can do boot system, and you'll see the path. So right now, let me actually do just a quick dir. Okay. You'll see right now I have an iOS image sitting inside of my Flash that is this image right here. Let's say I was going to upgrade to a new image. If the switch has enough space, you would do a copy TFTP Flash, copy the new image in here, and you would suddenly have two images in Flash. Well, what you do then is you go into global config and do boot system Flash : and then put in the name of the new image. So whatever it happened to be. So it says 29. I'm actually just going to do 2960. I'm going to do the one that's already in there. So you can see 2960-land base K9-MZ.1150.se4.bin. Okay. Now, if I do a do show boot, you'll see it's now saying that the boot path where it was blank before. And by the way, if it's blank, it boots the first iOS image it finds in Flash. This tells it boot from this image. So if I had upgraded the image to a new image, I could say this, reboot the machine and make sure the image works. If the image works, I could then delete the old image. If the image didn't work, what I actually normally happen is it will then try the secondary image that's in there. If not, you can easily change this from inside of your set commands by doing a control break and changing the boot system. Okay. So real world, this boot system command allows you to put a new image on a device, specify that new image, reboot the machine, make sure everything's working okay, and then delete the old image.
What's the purpose? You want to move to another iOS? Is that?
Yeah, you want to move to another iOS, but you know, moving to a new iOS is full of possible issues. Yeah,
So you want to make sure that the previous one is there before you check, before
Correct.
you start. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank
you're going to boot to the new image, make sure. And what I would probably do if I had enough space in the Flash is I'd boot to the new image, let it run a couple of days to a week to make sure everything's okay, then delete the old image.
Mhm.
If not, I can just change my boot system Flash command back to the old image, delete the image, the new image I put in, and roll back to the old image.
When you stack switches, they have to have the same iOS. And
Yes.
we ran into that. We wanted to update some 9300s that we got. And then we had it's a fun process.
Yeah, if they don't, if they're stack-wise technology, they've got to all be on the same exact iOS. Because what they actually end up doing is they actually end up appearing as a single switch. They actually end up as one, looking like one backbone. So there's kind of there's a primary switch in the stack, and then all the other ones are kind of like secondary switches in the stack, but they do have to have the same iOS. But again, you could do this to get the images on it and do boot system Flash and make sure they're all booting from the right image. Yeah. So I just want to throw that in there and let you know about that. So here's secure copy. Anybody know about secure copy? Copying iOS images. Right now, we've used, in the past, we've always used TFTP to send information between two devices. Well, you actually can turn on secure copy, and you do that by turning on, well, we're going to talk about AAA later, but it's AAA new model. We'll talk about that later. But basically, you've got to have SSH working, and then you do IP SCP server enable, which allow it to do secure copy. So you can send using SCP instead of doing a TFTP.
Kelly, is this command is available in Linux as well? This
Yeah.
is-
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's an open. Yeah. SCP is just an open secure protocol that uses SSH to move traffic through it.
From one machine to another.
Yep. Yep. So let's say you were trying to copy from your router to, copy your config file from a router to a Linux machine that's running a SCP server. This is how you could do it. And
You
then your
usually
config won't be sent with
username-
clear text.
You give a username at and then the IP address or something, and then it will ask for password and then transfer.
Yep.
Right? Yep.
Or you can put it in like this, which is basically you say SCP, put in the IP address of the remote server, it prompts you for, there's different ways of doing it, but basically what it does though is at this point you're not actually sending your config in plain text across the network. It's going to be encrypted using SSH. Okay.
So SCP is using SSH?
Yeah, SCP uses SSH as the background
Okay.
background encryption protocol. Yep. Or that's what it does on Cisco routers. How many of you have ever done a password recovery on a Cisco router?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, many times.
Yes.
I have.
Students-
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's just it's a done deal. Students are going to break things. Basically, hit a control break. One thing I have seen too, a lot of times if control break doesn't work, don't forget inside of PuTTY. You also can do we go to serial open. Where's it at? You can actually do this. You can right click up here and go send break, special command break. So for some reason you're doing it and it's not taking your keyboard commands. When you got PuTTY up, click along the top and go special command break, and it will send break inside of here. I've had to do that before when whatever reason the keyboard wasn't sending commands to PuTTY. But you should actually be able to just hit control break, go into Armon mode, put confreg 2142, which basically says bypass the startup config. Do control C to skip it, and then copy startup running config. You're inside of privilege mode at that time. You can change your passwords and so on and so forth. I'll tell you an easier way to cheat though. If it's not the enable secret password, if it's just a console password and the router has an auxiliary port on it, stick your console cable in the auxiliary port and hit enter a couple of times and see if you can get in with the auxiliary port. Because a lot of times the auxiliary port is not secured and you can get into the console using that. And you'll bypass the console password because guess what? It's the auxiliary port. So there's no console password on it. So to drop you in user exec mode, and you can change the console password if you know the enable secret password. The other thing I'll tell you is this, as instructors, you all know this, just try a space after Cisco, try class instead of Cisco, or try Cisco instead of class, try all caps, try first cap. You all know these tricks. I'm not telling you anything there. Now, I will tell you, this is possible, but this is very dangerous. You can't actually turn off the password recovery procedure. So you can do no service password recovery. If you do this, you could turn your device into a brick if you ever forget the passwords. All right. There is, to my knowledge, no way to fix this. Now, if you had an older router that had like the PCMCI, the old ones that had the PCMCI flash in the back, you could probably take that flash card out, put a whole new flash card in, and that would work. But if it's an internal one with no flash, you can get in really big trouble. So this is one of those, teach your students, tell them not to do it unless, there may be some situations where the security policy of the company says you must do this, and then you'll do it. but otherwise, I don't recommend this out in the wild. Let's talk about a couple other things here. LLDP, CDP, everybody knows those. Cisco Discovery Protocol, which is Cisco's proprietary layer 2 protocol that will show you directly connected neighbors, and it will also show you the type of iOS, the IP addresses, and a lot of information about it. LLDP is the open standard, the link layer discovery protocol that does the same thing as CDP. By default, these are on. Also, other items that can be turned on by default, things like finger service, simple servers, all these things are on by default. How many of you have heard of hardening?
Yes.
Device hardening.
Yeah.
Okay, Corey, what does device hardening mean?
Basically shutting down every avenue of approach to a device, both physical and on the device itself. All the unused ports, all the unused interfaces, unused protocols, everything.
And the only thing I'd change yours is I would say you turn off everything that's not being used.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got to go through, make a list and determine what we don't need. Now, one of the things it says here, turn off CDP if it's not needed. You got to be very, very careful, because guess what? If you're running Cisco IP phones, you need CDP on the interfaces those phones are connected to. So if you go turning CDP off globally, you could break your entire IP phone network if you're running Cisco phones. Some phones use LLDP, so you got to be very careful there. So they've got to make decisions about what can be turned off. Now, if it can be turned off, though, you should turn it off. This, after version iOS 12.3, they came out with what is called Auto Secure. And what it will do is it will go through and try to turn off all of the unused services that it can find. So you go in here, Auto Secure, and you can do no interact, full management, any of these, but it will actually look at the 3 different items it can actually work on. So the management plane, the forwarding plane, and the functions of the router. So the 3 forwarding plane services, it looks at Ceph, ACLs, and the iOS firewall. If you've got, it will turn on the iOS firewall. This command will, if you do no interact, it will go through and literally do it all for you. Not something you probably should do. Okay. The default is full. So before it turns anything off, it will ask you, you want me to turn off this? You want me to do that? You want me to do that? Okay. Likewise, you can do these others. You can only do the forwarding plane being secured. You can only do the management plane being secured. You can only do these items being secured or being looked at. Let's look at what it looks at here. So it's saying, here's Auto Secure. It's going to run. It's going to gather information for you. It's going to ask you which of these are facing the internet. So in other words, it's trying to determine what the dirty side of your network is and what the clean side of your network is, so it can set up an access control list. Okay, what are those planes? All right. The management plane is the plane you interact with to manage the router and to enter commands and do those types of things. The forwarding plane is the plane that does the decision making for you. In other words, it's the plane that when a packet comes in on the ingress interface, it's what's used to make the decision about the egress interface, which in most cases, the forwarding plane for us is dealing with Ceph. We're dealing with the Cisco Express forwarding, because that's what's used for the forwarding plane. So that's the management plane and the forwarding plane. That's the ones we deal with mainly.
So these planes are in the router, and
Right.
so is it some like forwarding plane and routing plane?
Now the forwarding plane deals with the routing. Okay. That's how and I call it a switching decision, because even though it is a routing decision, it actually switches it between an ingress and an egress interface. But the forwarding plane is where the decision's being made on where to route packets and the process to route packets. Are you familiar with Ceph?
No.
Okay. Well, we need to stop here a second. Let's talk about not OneNote. I typed OneNote like a doofus. Notepad. Okay. In a router, there are 3 different ways that you can do that the route plane or the forwarding plane can do lookups. Okay, so when a packet comes in, I said packet comes in from 10.0.0.10/8, the router's got to make a decision about where that's going to go.
Which interface?
Right, it's going to come in an ingress interface, comes into the router determines, okay, that is on the network 10.0.0.0/8. Where am I going to send that? All right. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Let me see if I can find another. Hold on one second.
I'm kind of familiar with the forwarding table and the routing table.
Right.
Is it in the same lines?
Similar. Let me find you one here. I'll find it for you. Actually, I should be able to find the actual picture of it.
I think the terms are the textual terms are from a text. It's like data plane and control plane.
Yeah, data plane, control plane.
Okay. So the management plane is the control plane?
Yes. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. Somebody help me out. It's Seth. We got Seth. Dang it. I am having a complete brain fart. What's the other two? Somebody help me out. Let me find it. I'll find it. Give me just a second. I will find it, y'all. Damn it. All right. Well, here's how it works. There's three different methods. One is the CPU does a full lookup for every packet regardless. Okay. And like I said, I cannot believe I'm drawing a darn blank on that.
It happens with everyone. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's aggravating though. Like I said, it's in CCNA 2. I just got to find the CCNA 2 classes I can get my hands in.
That doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, it's in CCNA 2. It's mentioned as part of the routing discussion. But yeah, and then the next one is it does a lookup. Okay, here we go.
Is it TCAM? John is
No, it's not TCM. It's not the TCAM table. That's in on a switch. Oh man, I cannot believe. Well, okay. Does a lookup on the first packet and then stores that lookup. Okay. And then the last one is Cisco Express forwarding.
is it STM?
No, it's not. No, it's not. Now it's Cisco Express forwarding. Here's the great thing. It takes the route table and builds a forwarding table of all possible routes and uses that. So when it never even has to shunt it out to the CPU. So the negative is on the different methods here. Okay, process switching. I just got that one in my head. So process switching is this one. And then Ceph is the last one. And the middle one, yeah, I can't remember. I'll look it up and find it, y'all. But basically, these are the three different methods. So when a packet comes in, if the router is using process switching, it will do a lookup. Now, the bad news is it will do a lookup for every packet going to the 10.0.0/8 network, no matter what. Okay. Even if there's a million packets coming in, every packet that comes in, it's going to do a full lookup and have to use the CPU to do that lookup. That's highly inefficient. The second method, which again is eluding me at the moment, and I apologize, but this is what it does.
Is it cut through?
That's switching, right?
Yeah, switching. It's
Oh,
not cut
yeah.
through, but it's the second method. I think it's actually fast forward is what it is. I'm pretty sure. Let me check that.
Fast forward is also a switching.
It is, but it's different. It's different for a switch. Okay, well, maybe it's not that. Either way, I know this is what it does. It does a lookup on the first packet and then stores that lookup. So if the first packet going to the 10.0.0/8, it will have to go to the control plane to the CPU, do a lookup, and then it stores that in a database so that it can use that for all the next packets that go to the 10 network. The final one is what's called Ceph. Now with Ceph, before anything even comes in, the router builds a Cisco Express forwarding table. And in that table are all the possible networks it knows how to get to through the routing table. So when that packet comes in for 10.0.0/8, it doesn't even have to involve the CPU. It literally just looks at it, knows where it's supposed to go, and sends it out the egress port. The way this is described is this is like doing a math problem the same longhand every single time, even though it's the same answer. This is like doing the math problem one time longhand, saving the answer, and then using the answer for all subsequent lookups. This is you solve all the problems beforehand and have them in a table and just look it up when you're asked what the problem is.
Like a proactive thing. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So it's that's those three there. So we try and we almost always use what is called Ceph. So Ceph is turned on by default. If we don't use that, then we actually are going to probably overload our CPU fairly quickly. God, I cannot believe I can't find that. Oh well, but y'all got the basics. That's why it's important to this. When you auto secure, it's important to secure that forwarding plane. Okay. So let's look. So we determine what's inside outside, so we can build a firewall. We look at all the services. So looking at the management plane, it can disable all of these services, and will tell you it's going to disable all those services. If you don't use the finger service, you don't want HTTP, you don't want CDP. Now these will be turned off at a global level. So you need to make sure if you're using auto config that, you know, maybe use it to turn it all off and then turn back on those things you need. But it will show you that. And it will ask you for banners to put in. So it's actually going to make you put banners in case you don't have them. It prompts you for all the passwords. So the different passwords for your different levels. And it also asks you to configure SSH. And then interfaces will be secured. So it goes into the interfaces and turns off services that are unneeded, like redirects, proxy ARP, all these things. And then finally, it can also enable or turn off Ceph. You do not want to turn off Ceph. Okay. You do not ever want to do that because that is a horrible idea. If you turn off Ceph, your router will slow down immensely. But then it asks you, do you want to do CBAC firewall features, which we're actually going to talk about what CBAC is in a couple chapters in next chapter 8. But basically, context-based access control firewall. Because you told it which side was the dirty side, which side was the clean side, if you allow it to create a CBAC, it's going to create a set of access lists that says any traffic originating on the inside, the clean side, is allowed to go out, and any of that traffic that was initiated in that path will be allowed back in, but nothing from the outside, dirty side, is allowed in by default. So that's what a context-based access control list does. It allows traffic one way, not the other, which, by the way, all of our home routers have that built into them. That's exactly how they're set up. They allow your traffic out to the internet, and if you initiated it from the inside, that traffic's then allowed back in. If you didn't, it's not allowed in at all. Okay. All right. So any questions on that? All right. So let me do something here real quick. All right. Yeah, it does. You don't know how bad that aggravates me that I forgot something that simple. It's so aggravating. Getting old is not for the weak. That's for sure. Okay. But I will look it up and find out, figure it out.
Well, Chat
All right,
GPT,
it is fast switching.
yeah, Chat
Fast
GPT told me it was fast switching, so it must be right.
Yeah, it is fast switching. That is correct. So it's process switching, fast switching, and then Ceph. So here we have, with process switching, packets are processed and forwarded directly by the router CPU. So that means every packet goes to the CPU to get forwarded. With fast switching, they're forwarded by the CPU once, and then it takes a cached entry for all future packets to the same destination. Ceph basically just builds a table beforehand, and when it comes in, it looks in the table, sends it out the egress port. Okay. So yeah, it only took me 20 minutes to figure that out. I guess I do need Chat GPT, right? Do you have a login? I don't have a login yet.
I created it. Yeah, it helps a lot.
I hadn't created one yet. I was trying to do some AI art the other day, and it wanted me to do logins, and I was like, I don't know about this. I didn't do it. All right, everybody, we'll pick up right here with looking at routing protocol authentication next week. So keep working. If you got any questions for me, let me know. I think most of our stuff is, yeah, you're in pretty good shape. Actually, in fact, I got to tell you, we will not have class next week. I will not be having a meeting next week. I just remembered I will be in Chicago. And on Wednesday night, I won't be free, I don't believe. So if you really need to see me, send me a text or send me an email, and I'll try to get up with you. But I'm leaving Tuesday for Chicago for a convention I've been trying to go to for 3 years. Because of COVID, I hadn't been able to. But we're finally getting to go. And yes, it is a gaming convention, so I'm gonna go play little miniatures and blow stuff up. But I've been trying to go to Adepticon in Chicago for 3 years, and so I'm finally gonna get to go again this year. So we will meet in 2 weeks. I will be canceling next week's meeting, but pay attention. I'm only going to cancel next Wednesdays, not the one after. So just don't think we're not meeting anymore. We're just not going to meet next week. And if you do need me, just let me know, and we can get together.